So, Berto, have you seen the new movie called Eighth Grade?
I have, yes.
What do you say we talk about it in our normal rambling fashion?
It rambled me to the core, so I'd love it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, professor, and a former eighth grader.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, also a former eighth grader, and I'm a mumble rapper.
Oh, so Rotten Tomatoes, guess what the rating is for Eighth Grade, the movie?
95%.
98.
Whoa.
Yeah, pretty high.
Yeah.
Great direction and writing. Bo Burnham wrote and directed it. Do you know Bo Burnham?
No, I know Lena Dunham.
Bo Burnham, it's his first movie. He's an American stand-up comic and YouTuber.
Oh, that's where I know the name. Yes, I do know Bo. I've seen him on YouTube, but I didn't connect the dots, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's. I imagine if you're into stand-up comedy, that you would recognize him.
Doesn't he have a Netflix thing too?
He might.
Okay.
I don't know.
At the very least, I've seen YouTube videos of him, but I wouldn't have thought that. Yeah, that's interesting. I certainly did not know he was the director.
Right. Like when I found that out, I was like, that's crazy. Because he's not like a super aggressive, masculine stand-up comic, but he's not particularly sensitive as a stand-up comic.
That's what I'm saying. Like that surprises me that he's the...
Right. Like I would have characterized him as, I don't know, kind of in the realm of Conan O'Brien, like a young, thoughtful Conan O'Brien or something. Sure. And at the very least, it's a guy who wrote and directed this movie that is getting rave reviews. And so this movie can't really be spoiled, so I wouldn't worry too much about us talking about the plot points. There's not really a...
Well, what if she does graduate? Oh, shoot.
She does graduate from the eighth grade. But so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But I'll tell you that, so this movie, Eighth Grade, is about an eighth grade girl. And she has different experiences going through the eighth grade. It's extremely accurate, people are saying. Women are saying it's very accurate to their experience. And it also, a lot of parents are calling it fairly accurate too, given their experiences with their own eighth grade girls, because they're always on their phone and this kind of thing. But it's just interesting that basically a dude bro comic writes and directs perhaps the most accurate movie about an eighth grade girl that's ever been made.
I certainly imagine that whoever wrote it was an older person who probably had kids. Right. Like had kids that age.
Right. He doesn't even have kids.
Yeah.
As far as I know. If he does, they're very young because he's pretty young.
I mean, the flip side is you could say, well, then maybe it had to be a very, very young person to kind of be more in tune with that.
Right.
With that world.
Right. But so I think he kind of qualifies as that. Like he's, I don't know how old he is. Maybe.
I heard though that even though he's in his early 30s or something, that he basically went on YouTube and watched countless hours of teenagers uploads, just to kind of get the sense of it, and then did like chatting with teenagers and things like that to kind of get the sense of how they talk, what they talk about, when they do make videos, what are those videos like?
Yeah, so that's great. But at the same time, the ability to capture the essence of someone in that world is difficult to do. And I think, really commendable to him. Yeah. It's also interesting that he was, he's a stand-up comic and he's just like, I think I'll write a screenplay. What should I write about? And so he did a interview with What the Fuck, the podcast with Mark Maron, WTF,
Yeah.
Do you know that podcast?
What the Fuck? Yes.
WTF?
Yes.
Yeah. The biggest podcast that's ever been made, the one that Barack Obama was on.
I guess I've heard of it.
Bo Burnham was on it recently talking about his experience and of his life and also writing the screenplay. Uh-huh. And he had panic attacks on stage a few years ago.
Oh.
And started to become very depressed and it was getting worse and worse. He doesn't know it, or maybe he does, but he's not phrasing it this way. he not only has panic attacks, but he also has PTSD as a result. Because now, so he had a panic attack while he was on stage, and then the next time he had another panic attack, and then the next time he was on his way to a gig and he had a panic attack. Ooh, I mean, this is what panic attack progression usually is, but it's also related to trauma. Your body essentially is associating a particular thing with terror.
Got it.
And even though your brain is like everything's fine, your body, which really dictates your life much more than your brain does.
I see.
Or your unconscious processes, let's say.
Yeah.
Is saying no, no, no. It's similar to if you needed to, you're that guy in 127 hours, and you need to cut off your arm in order to save yourself.
Right.
Intellectually, after a couple of days, you're probably pretty resolved that that's the case, but to get up the nerve to overcome your bodily urge to not cut off your arm, and the pain would be really hard to do. But anyway, so he started having panic attacks, and then he stopped doing stand-up comedy, and so he started to write a screenplay. And he said that he wondered, I can't remember exactly the way he said it, but I think he was like, who can I write about that would be in a situation that, essentially what he was saying was he felt like he was in middle school and he was scared of making a fool out of himself. And it
reminded him of that.
Right. I think that's the gist of it. So it's like it's interesting topic that kind of makes sense once you hear his background. What do you think of the acting in the movie?
I mean, it was weird because I kind of felt that I was wondering, wait, did he write? It felt hard for him to write the script for some of it. Like, for example, when she's recording her videos, because it felt so natural, like what a teenager probably would be, a nervous teenager would be like.
Right.
Right. So then I thought, I wonder what would be more effective, to give her the topic and then let her just talk it out, or write out the script exactly.
Right. So here, I don't know, and I'd be curious what the process was as well. So by the way, if you're a therapist, especially if you work with teenagers,
watch this.
You have to watch this movie. It's a must see. It's probably the most important movie you'll ever see. Really.
I feel if you're a person.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. No, but you're right. Yeah.
The other thing is it's extremely entertaining.
Very, very so.
Like there are movies. I always make fun of Boyhood. Although I liked it, doesn't really have. I can't really recommend it to people.
Yeah. Right. That one. I guess I actually know a couple people that hated Boyhood, that I would be leery to recommend this movie to, even though this one is shorter and way more entertaining in the traditional sense of, Yeah, I was highly entertained in Boyhood, but I agree with you that it's sort of a hard one to recommend in that sense.
Whereas Eighth Grade is funny. Yeah. It's similar to Lady Bird in this way. Yeah. In that if you just described it to someone, they'd be like, huh? But when you watch it, it moves pretty quick. The scenes are interesting.
And the music's great.
Oh, man. The music was...
The audio.
Awesome. What did you think of the music?
It was just so well layered in, because you have those moments like, the first time she sees the guy she's into. Yeah. Dun, 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 it's like... It's jarring in a great way because it really accentuates these moments. It also has this effect, at least I felt, that it drags you into her brain. Right. And it like puts you in her mindset, and then you come back out. Yeah. Which of course movies do, but this one does it even more explicitly.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way of putting it. I noticed that right away. I thought, man, whoever directed this or whoever was making the music choices is a genius. Yeah. Because there's so many different conventions to music that the director or the music director broke away from. Yeah. That the music is, like you say, it's quite noticeable and jarring. Yeah. It dominates. It's not just a background. It's like just totally in your face often. Right. The music I'm assuming was written specifically for the movie.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yet the music sounds like music that people would listen to. Right. You know what I mean? Like the songs are actually pretty good. Right. They're all instrumentals, but they're like, pretty cool jams, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like the instrumentals of songs that would be being listened by that same group of kids.
Right, like MGMT
Yeah.
or Odessa.
Which MGMT is a recent band from 12 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, although I still feel like MGMT is still
still relevant,
cutting edge
yeah.
in some ways, you know, especially some of their odder songs. But yeah, so I thought the music was extremely effective, and I every time it happened, it happens like 3 or 4 times in very noticeable ways, and it was almost to me like it you know, I could see Bo Burnham 10 movies in. That's what he's known for, you know, like Spike Lee is known for the dolly shot. Scorsese is known for those push-ins that he does. What's his face?
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson is known for his
center framing,
his symmetrical flat shot, and Bo Burnham will be known for these for those real stark, emotional, in your head musical beats.
Do you know what it reminded me? But it's a totally different take on it. So in the drug movie and the Mother and what's Aronofsky?
Aronofsky.
Yeah. Okay. So in the movie,
drug movie.
The drug movie. What's the name of that one?
Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. So one of my favorite movies. So you know how they do the
clearly since you remember that.
Yeah. I mean, my brain's going. But do you know how they do the quick cuts? Obviously, you know, like they do, and then they. So. That is a technique, right? Where it's like, I'm going to show you several quick things to give you the sense of what's happening, right? So in this case, what he was doing in a few times is he would play music, and then there would be a scene happening. And sometimes there would even be dialogue that you can't hear, but you get the sense of what's happening. And so it's like the music is providing you the feeling, and then the visuals are giving you like the extra information. And it condenses, like I think if he had the same scene and you just heard the audio, then the onus would be on the dialogue to really give you all the nuance and everything.
Well, right. So the scene where I think it first happens is when she goes to the pool party and she is walking down the deck stairs to the pool. Yeah. And you just get this, and there's like pull away cuts to like people having fun in slow motion. And I think it's slow motion, and she's walking slow motion. And if you didn't do it slow motion and you just shot it normally, it would be an awkward scene that we could all kind of relate to because she looks frumpy in her bathing suit.
And they make a point. There's not every kid, but there's a majority. This is one of the cool girls' party.
Right.
So a lot of the kids there are the cool girls' friends.
Right.
And they're all cool. They're in their bikinis and they're just neat.
Right.
And she's like, oh, I've just arrived to this place I don't belong. And you're right that you get this sense, the inner conversation in her head.
Right. But with that song, it really accentuates and you can really empathize, and you feel, and I hear this from people watching it. I didn't really feel this way as much as other people were. Just the deep sense of being transported back to how horrible 8th grade was. Did that happen to you?
No, but I certainly related to what she must have been going through.
Yeah, so I think I'm similar to you. I mean, 1, 8th grade wasn't that bad for me,
right?
And 2. I don't know. I guess I've been exposed a lot of times to material. I've already gone through those steps where because I've counseled countless 8th graders.
The closest thing it reminded me of actually was in 11th grade, because so in 11th grade I dated a 12th grader who was about to graduate. Okay, and she was one of the cool kids, and she had all her cool 12th grader friends. And
this in Tacoma.
Yeah. And so I got to go one day. She's like, hey, you should come out to this place. We're going to be playing volleyball and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, awesome. So I show up and I totally felt similar. I mean, like I could relate because I show up and I'm like this like 11th grader and I'm showing up, and all these people kind of know each other, and they are the cool kids, so they're wearing their little shades and they're playing volleyball. And I definitely felt like, oh boy, I'm out of my element here, right?
Right.
And I had to like pretend to be, fine with it and stuff, but inside I'm like kind of freaking out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, Bo Burnham's ability to write, direct, and shoot and edit, and his team of people to create what I believe to be perhaps just an iconic scene in American cinema, which is that opening scene as she walks to the pool party. It's so universal. I don't think anyone, everyone's had an experience like that.
Right.
I mean, I'm still having experiences like that as a 47-year-old man.
Well, and it's set up so well, right? Because she doesn't want to go to the party.
Right.
And then,
but she kind of does.
Well, her dream would be to go and have it be a successful experience, but she kind of suspects, she feels it's going to be a horrible experience. Right. And then her dad pushes her into it. And then she shows up, and it feels almost like she's being sent off to war. When she leaves the car, she's like, her head is down, and she walks up to the house, and she comes in, and the mom greets her. By the way, there was this little subtext of,
where's the dad?
The mom was into the dad, right?
Yeah.
And so then she comes in. By the way, they did a good job of, it was all from the perspective of the 8th graders, because there was this world of adults that was hinted at, but was not explicitly bubbling through. Right. And then she comes in, and then she probably a panic attack in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we don't know exactly how badly it was, but it was filmed in a way to convey intense anxiety in the bathroom.
So intense social anxiety.
Yeah. And then she just kind of resigns herself to walk out, and she's just kind of hands in front, like protecting herself. And she walks up, she looks through the little door. She even fails because she opens the door and it doesn't open all the way.
Yeah. So here's the genius of this writing. And there were several moments in the movie like this, that there's been other people have made scenes like this.
Yeah.
Not as masterful even to start out, but it's not an uncommon scene to have a kid fish out of water, scared of the popular kids. The nerd kid is hanging out with the popular kids. Well, the genius of Bo Burnham and of this scene is that it would have been so easy to have the cool kids ridicule her or look at her.
Right.
Or, like the cool girls. I was just waiting for that cliche
to happen.
Whispering. Yeah, the cool girls look at her
and they smile.
And they snicker. Look at her terrible, outfit or whatever. And like that never happens.
Because they're not even thinking about it.
They're not. Well, one, they're not thinking about her, and two, it's just not realistic.
They're just kids having fun at a party.
Right.
They're in their own heads with their own problems, with their own things.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other trope that I was worried about was. That didn't happen as well was that there was just the other sort of turn in that scene that I thought was felt realistic was she gets into the pool and she just sort of becomes invisible, right? She's just like, okay, I'm going to sit here in the pool and I'm just going to, I hope no one sees me. And then this nerdy guy just starts to kind of nerd talk to her.
Which I think that's when the music breaks, right?
Oh, really?
Like the music has been going and all of a sudden he's like, hey, I just swam all the way across the pool.
Yeah, I can hold my breath real long, And then, he just sort of strikes up a conversation with her and she's like, oh, really? Okay. And then he kind of breaks off and then that's that. Like, it's just like a normal actual situation.
It didn't take over the movie.
Right. And I just thought that was great. I want to get back to what you're talking about, the writing and directing and acting as she did. So if you haven't seen the movie, which you need to see the movie, throughout the movie are sprinkled in these YouTube videos that she makes where it's like she makes instructional videos where she presses record on her recorder and she says, okay, people, I'm going to tell you today about how to be you.
Confident.
How to be confident. Well, you just have to do this and do this. And the conceit is that when she's in front of the camera on YouTube, she seems confident. She seems to know how to have all the answers. Right. But in her real life, her life is in shambles.
Right.
I mean, she doesn't know how to do anything.
Yeah, from her perspective, at least. Yeah.
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 And so she'll go to school and she won't talk to anyone, and then she'll come home and make a video that makes it seem like she knows what she's doing, right. And she has lots of friends, and she's just giving advice to people. So it's sort of like her super ego, right. Or her therapist voice or something. But the videos are, and I think the movie starts with one of these videos.
Yeah,
are one, no one's watching them on the internet. Like some of them have no views.
Yeah, they scroll through and it's like no views.
Like I think the most viewed video had 7 views or something. Yeah. And that's a real world. Like as a YouTuber myself,
right.
There were when I first started out, no one viewed. I would spend.
It's a black hole.
I would spend like all week putting, and you be there, Lita would be there, the camera people. We would make something, put it on YouTube. No one would watch it.
Crickets.
Because unless you have an audience that knows about you, or the analytics are such that the video will pop up in people's feeds, it just won't happen. But anyway, so they seem pretty realistic. There was a little bit of I could tell she was kind of following a script at times. Like there were times when I was like, this doesn't seem exactly realistic. Do you know what I mean?
During the videos?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, it was definitely as realistic as you're going to get in the situation.
Yeah, because I got a little bit of a different sense, which was that when you are actually trying to ad-lib something, because she clearly didn't write it out. That was the thing, right? She wasn't reading off of her notes.
Her character. Right. Her character was ad-libbing.
Ad-libbing. Yeah. And when you really try to ad-lib, especially when you're younger, especially if you're shy, you do get a lot of those. So the thing is that what you would do...
Well, she did have those.
Right.
Like in one of them, there were just a ton of likes.
Yeah, well...
She said, so like,
that's my point, but that sounded so natural to me.
It did.
And so I was wondering... Did he write it that way, or was she actually improvising?
Right. So going back to that whole thing, I wonder what it was, but I suspect that it was a combination of a few things. One, that he did write it out, mm-hmm. and 2, that they probably had a conversation with her, where she would say, I don't know if someone might, because she's actually in the 8th grade,
right?
By the
she's
way.
That age,
and which is another great thing about this movie is like they're all. Because sometimes you see these teenage dramas and you can tell they're all 25.
They're 25.
Yeah. And so the other nice thing, so I think there was probably a conversation and there was probably like a number of takes. But I could sort of tell that she had memorized at least the main beats. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, and I imagine she would maybe do it that way too. She would write down like, okay, I want to say this. And I probably want to say this, but she didn't write a whole script.
You mean the character?
The character, yeah.
All right, well, let's take a break. When we get back, let's continue talking about the movie. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast, do so now. Go to patreon.com, become a patron of the podcast. Also, email me at contact@psychologyinseattle.com if you have any questions or if you're having trouble with the premium feed. Sometimes there's problems. Also, like us on Facebook and join our Facebook fan group. And tweet Berto at PsychoBerto. And the O is a 0.
Psych 0
Berto.
At
there's no at.
Well, it's at Psych 0 Berto.
At PsychoBerto.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I thought it was excellent acting. Elsie Fisher. The only other thing that I know her from is she was the voice of Agnes in the Despicable Me films.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which kind of bugs me out because was Agnes the oldest one?
Oh, I had no idea.
Oh.
I've not seen those movies.
Oh, I think Agnes is the oldest one.
So she is an actress.
Yeah,
okay.
She's done some acting and also voice acting. Josh Hamilton, did you recognize the dad?
Yeah, but I didn't know from where. I was like, okay, I know this guy.
Yeah, he's been a bit part in a lot of movies that I've seen. and he's my age, which is interesting. So it's like I
felt like I've seen this guy so many times.
Yeah.
But I can't place my finger on it.
So he was in Alive, 1993.
Okay.
So he's one of those guys.
Okay.
He was
Yes, I actually remember the face now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kicking and Screaming, 95.
And he was super young. Oh, I didn't see Kicking and Screaming, but Alive.
He was a bit part in The Bourne Identity.
Okay.
He was a bit part in J. Edgar in 2011.
Didn't see that.
And he was a bit part in Manchester by the Sea.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I didn't see Manchester by the Sea. So I clearly remember him from Alive.
Okay.
And he was one of the main guys.
I think so.
Yeah, he was one of the soccer players, right?
Yeah. There were... so Ethan Hawke was one of those guys.
Yeah,
too.
so that's why I remember his face so well, because I loved that movie. I probably saw it like 3 times back then. So
I get him mixed up with this other guy who was in the movie Barcelona, but anyway. Yeah, I thought that they were both really great. I thought the dad's character was hilarious.
Oh my gosh!
That scene. So another iconic scene. The dad. So the mom left the family, and it's just the dad and the kid.
Did she leave?
Yeah, she divorced and left.
How do you know that?
They said that.
Well, because he said when your mom left, but I didn't know if that meant left or left.
You mean died?
Yeah.
I doubt that's what it meant.
Okay.
Why would a father say, when your mom
because you're
left,
trying to soften it, like when your mom left.
Well, yeah. I don't remember, but from my memory, she had left.
Yeah.
Which I just want to say is kind of a trope in movies where moms are always the one who are gone, like Bambi and other kinds of movies.
Yeah, the mother's very close to...
When in reality, although mothers do leave and do abandon their kids, it's just interesting that it doesn't seem to be represented in art.
Mm.
But anyway,
well, but by the way, it was when she was a teeny baby. Because he said, or little, because he said, and I was worried how you were gonna start
Oh yeah.
But then he said things like you actually made your first friend, and which all happens little, like at 2 or something, 3.
Right. Yeah, that was a real sweet scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, that iconic scene between the dad and the kid they're just having a regular dinner.
Yeah.
And she's on her phone and she has her headphones in the whole time.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to be cool. And you can tell he's kind of frustrated, but he's not letting it get to him. He is the sort of dad who's just like, look, I'm not going to be a hard ass with my daughter if she's on her phone. If she wants to be on her phone, she wants to be on her phone. But I also feel like I want to interact with her, and I feel like it's wrong that we just sit here.
Well, and they had made a deal. It was a Friday, so she was allowed to do anything she wanted or something.
Right.
Like that.
She could be on her phone the whole time. I mean, it was just there were so many. It's so realistic, but also just really funny to watch.
Because that was actually bugging me at first during that scene. I'm like, why is he letting her be so rude to him right now? And then she's like, well, it's a Friday. And then I also realized, man, it must be so hard because he's by himself with her.
Well, not only that, but that's an interesting impulse that you had. It's just like, why isn't he coming down
regulating?
On yeah. And certainly that would be a viable decision that a parent could make. And I actually recommend parents do stuff like that. But if you've been around kids that are like this, who are like super into their phones, it just becomes this, you just get beaten down, you're just like, because if you set it that unless you're willing to like get into a real power struggle where you actually take the phone away, and you deal with all those consequences, which a lot of parents aren't going to do, then you just kind of resign yourself like, well, I guess my kid's always going to be head down into their phone all the time. And, as long as they're passing their classes and going to school and doing their chores, I guess, okay, and they, anyway, so I just got the sense like he had long ago just said, well, if that's what she wants to do, then I guess that's what she's going to be doing.
Were you allowed to read or play Game Boy at the dinner table?
Oh, God, no. Are you kidding me?
Right.
God, no. In my family, the dinner protocol was extremely
specific.
Yeah. You had to sit up straight. You couldn't, I mean, all the regular rules applied. Like you couldn't swear or say the word.
Yeah.
You couldn't say the word fart, and you could.
That's so specific.
And you couldn't put your elbow on the table.
Right.
And you had to say, excuse me and thank you and please pass the, and you didn't just get up from the table.
No.
You know?
I was the same in Colombia. I had not the same protocols in both grandma's houses, but certainly protocols. And you experienced a little bit like when you were at lunch at my grandma's. It's a sit down lunch, you know.
Yeah.
People, now, the one weird thing is because of the culture, the men are always sitting down. And then the women are usually doing all the fetching and coming and going.
Right.
And in fact, at my grandma, the one you met, that house, it's almost the extreme because in many cases, like some of the women won't even eat until everyone else is done.
Oh yeah, my family
Which is
too.
Crazy.
Yeah, my mom was that way. I mean, on a regular night, she would have prepared the food well enough in advance where she could sit down as well.
I see.
But she definitely sat down later, and definitely none of us. I mean, she would have my sister make the table sometimes, but yeah, it was all my mom's job, and if there was anything that needed to be done, she would get up and do it. You know what I mean?
Whereas at my dad's mom's house, which is where I actually grew up, it was a mix because my dad definitely, he was like, no, you're doing the dishes. Like I would have to do the dishes, things like that, and they cooked all day, right? So there was food ready, and so everyone sat down. It was my grandma, her sister, my grandpa, and my dad. Every now and then we'd have a dinner guest or something. And there was certainly no fooling around. You know, you sit down, you eat your food. I had to eat all of my food.
Yeah, me too, yeah. The nice thing about my family was there were so many kids, and I had two older siblings who were very responsible that I never had to do any chores because they were always... Like they hand washed the dishes.
I see.
I think every night.
Oh man!
And I literally never ever washed a dish as a kid. Like
so that's great. I wonder, is it hard for you to do dishes now?
So the very short answer I'll say to that is, so right out of high school, I moved out to go to college,
and then you had to learn
at UW, and I went through a number of years trying to adjust, one, to the notion of chores, and two, to how to do them.
I see.
Like I went to the laundry, room, and I was like just staring at it, and someone had to tell me how to do it, because especially the old one, well, even the new ones, if you look at those things, like there's a lot of lingo on there.
Yeah.
Like mixed and like they're tumble, totally. Dry, and spin cycles. Like it was very confusing, but over time, I've never been one to let other people do chores.
Okay.
And so, within, I don't know, 10 years, like I was.
So living on your own obviously was a forcing function.
Well, I lived with other people. You mean living away from my parents?
Oh, I actually meant living on your own. So never mind. You
I did. Yeah. So eventually I lived by myself. But by necessity, I became, by the time I was 30, I was extremely fastidious and very good with chores, and loved my vacuum cleaner and dusted, and because one, I just slowly kind of woke up to it, but two, I have been seeing clients in my house for a long time, and there's nothing more motivating to be clean than especially in early career when I was sort of insecure about my place in the profession. I really wanted my house to be clean, and my furniture was very bad because I couldn't afford good furniture. It was secondhand store chairs and couches.
So you're trying to make it look as nice as possible otherwise.
Right. And I cleaned the bathroom, and now I'm like I clean the toilet like frequently. I'm just like, how's the toilet doing? Ooh, little dusty. Let's wipe it down. Anyway, I don't know how we got on that topic, but so let's just kind of go through some stuff. Yeah, so I thought Josh Hamilton was great, but Elsie Fisher just really great. I mean,
really?
that is a hard. I give it sort of, because you always have to consider the director and the writer along with Elsie Fisher. So the Bo Burnham Elsie Fisher team created just a magical performance for Elsie Fisher. I bet you she will be an Oscar contender, actually, for Best Actress, now that I think about it. She has to carry the entire movie.
No, and you get so much, because there's so many times where it's just the way she is looking, the way her face is, and then you get so much. Obviously, when she's speaking, she's doing a great job, but there's a lot of nonverbal acting that she did.
Yeah, subtle too. Like when she confronts the popular girls at the end of the movie. Yeah. And again, another just genius scene that could have been done in a really cheesy way,
right?
But was done in this realistic way, she's telling off the popular girls.
She couldn't look her in the eye.
Yeah. And the popular girls, they're just looking at her like, what?
We actually, you see when she first squares off, but the rest of the time you don't see them at all.
Yeah.
You just see her, and you don't even see their reaction after.
No, you see their reaction midway through at the very least. There's
okay, they might show their faces once.
Yeah. And the popular girls they're just, because they're on their phones, as they always are, and the popular girls, or maybe I'm thinking of the others anyway.
Yeah, because I felt that they just focus on her. She says her whole thing, and then you see them from the side as she's walking away.
And they're just kind of looking at her. And they're just
like,
what? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in another movie.
There was a scene earlier in the movie when she comes out and she's trying to be friendly.
Maybe I'm mixing
and they're both on their phones and they're not even looking at her, and they're like,
Yeah.
And then the black girl looks at her and like,
Yeah.
And then they both walk away and like, oh.
Right. So that was another great scene too, because a more sort of expeditious or pandering scene the popular girls would be like, whatever. But it's instead the girls you could tell
they just want it to end.
Yeah, they just want it to end. They're just like, what's happening right now?
And they're being passive aggressive by completely ignoring her.
Yeah.
But they're not upfront enough to say like, hey, we don't want to talk to you.
Right. They're not being overtly rejecting.
Right.
And that's what would really happen in real life,
Right.
Anyway, so just going over my notes here. Throughout the movie, all I wanted to do was reach into the screen, grab her and shake her and just say, get out of your fucking head. Like life is good and just stop thinking so goddamn much. You know what I mean? Like that's because she's so socially anxious that she is never just herself, like she can't ever, even when she's around her dad, she has social anxiety around her dad. I mean, that's one thing that I think they depicted really well in this movie that I have seen firsthand, is that when you suffer from social anxiety, it's not just with the popular kids at school.
Right.
You can have social anxiety in your own family, even if it's just you and your dad.
Yeah.
You're so in your head and you're so scared of making a fool out of yourself that even with your dad, who just 3 years earlier, you had no self-conscious around your dad when you were younger.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're in the 8th grade and like, even the people who love you unconditionally, you are terrified of their disapproval socially.
Right. So I actually, I don't know if it was full on social anxiety or whatever, but I can relate to this.
It was. It hurt.
Okay. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, for me.
Oh, for you.
Yeah, for me, it probably was. But so when I was a kid, at my dad's mom's house, I was the most comfortable because that's where I spent all my time. And I don't remember ever really feeling this way. But whenever I would go to my other grandma's house, the one you met, Liti.
Yeah.
And they'd have those big lunches. So imagine like the lunch we're at, but like multiply the attendance by like 10, just the house packed with lots of adults mostly, right? And it was me and my 2 cousins. There were rarely other kids. So tons of adults, and they all know each other and they're all talking. And it's like, oh, this is Teresita's boy. Oh, hi. And I would always feel so self-conscious. Like, gosh, are they just all judging me? Like, wow, this kid is like unkempt, or what is he wearing, or his hair's a mess, or whatever, right? And I would always feel like very on edge, like anxious at this, or, and that was a memory I definitely remember. Or I remember one time I went to a wedding, and it was a very fancy wedding at a rich house or something, and I totally felt that way. I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel like I'm being judged everywhere,
Right. And I remember kind of feeling that way when I was this age with my own family, and but I didn't know it at the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? When you're that age. It's the 8th grade, 7th, 8th, 9th grade are these really perfect confluence for certain problems. One, you have very little sense of yourself as an adult, as an independent person. Even if you have a sense of yourself as a younger person, it's a completely different thing to now, there's just sort of binary. It's like there's kids and there's adults.
Yeah.
And that's why we call them, tweens. It's like, well, what am I? And there's this super big desire to like be a legit older teen.
Yeah.
But you have no abilities yet. You have no like knowledge about how to interact.
You have no mobility. Like you don't have a license. You can't drive yourself.
Right. Yeah. So you have all the insecurity and none of the skill.
Yeah.
And you also are just completely up in your head and blow everything out of proportion the way a child would. But you have desires that of an adult because you want to be liked by people. Right. You want to have, romantic sexual
you started to have sexual desires. Your body is a mess. Like it's going wacko. You're like, what's happening?
Yeah. So other things in my notes here, that the Bo Burnham as a dude chose to not really have any redeemable males in this movie, aside from the dad, of course.
Huh.
But there weren't any. There weren't that many.
What do you mean redeemable?
Well, there were basically there weren't that many boys, but
sure.
that there were 3 main boy characters. There was the cool kid, whom she had a crush on.
Right.
There was the nerd kid who she went on a date with at the end of the movie, which was just hilarious.
Yeah.
That whole
scene.
They
got along.
Yeah.
So it was redeemable.
Yeah, but he was a pretty minor character,
Sure. Yeah.
And then the older boy who tried to date rape her. He didn't try to date rape her. Well, he was clearly nerdy in his own way, and he was hoping that finally he could hook up because she was a younger girl, so he could impress her. And he made the most awkward and uncomfortable of moves, and she was like not having it, and then he was like, okay, fine. And then he was rude to her and angry because he felt rejected. But as soon as she drew a boundary, he respected it. Yeah, I'm glad you're saying that because I'm guessing a lot of people will relate to that, and I certainly can have sympathy for that point of view, but I do not agree.
I mean, at the very least, what possible pieces of how do I say this? He's either someone who's done this and it's worked, in which case he's learned that it works,
I guess.
Or he is just awkward and doesn't have success with the ladies, in which case he's trying to somehow have success with the ladies.
I think that's true, but I'm here to tell you, I never did anything like this when I was his age. And
neither did I.
And there's a reason for that, because we would not, so he's a senior in high school. She's in 8th grade. So
were they seniors?
Yeah, they were old, at least juniors. They were,
that's a
older.
big difference, actually.
Well,
he
was driving a car, so he's got to be, up there.
I kind of got the sense that they were like younger than that, but
that's not that big of a deal, because you can certainly have an 8th grader dating a senior. It's not that big of a deal. It can be a big deal, but it can work. The thing is that right from the start, it's clear she does not know what she's doing, and she is a young child. Like right from the start, he gets in the backseat of the car, and at no point is he like, so are you cool with this? Or, he's not trying to romance her. He's not trying to get to know her.
But she doesn't know how to do, right? Like
what?
He doesn't know how to do that.
Well, but there are ways of doing that in a clunky way. That's not the mode he was in. The mode he was in was one.
He wanted action.
What?
He wanted some action.
Great. and as a lot of boys and girls want action,
Right.
but there are ways of going about it, and you have to see this scene to understand what we're talking about. But essentially, what happens is she gets in a situation where she's being driven home by this older boy.
Well, and he manipulated it to be that way.
Well, kind of.
Remember the girl,
he was
the
open
older
to it
girl,
for sure.
Well, no, but the older girl said, "Hey, we should take her home."
Yeah.
And he said, "No, that's ridiculous. You're right here. I'm going to drop you off here, and I'll take her home."
Right.
In his head, he was obviously thinking ahead. He's like, "All right, I think I could get a little something here because she seemed interested in me earlier because she talked to me." Like I'm just saying, look.
I think you're giving him the benefit of that, which is fine.
No, it's actually the opposite. I'm just saying, like, and your experience might have been different, but I'm saying I'm rewinding my mind to like a sexually obsessed like 8th grader, or well, I wasn't that, but let's say, around that age, some people become very sexually aware and obsessed, right? And actually, not sorry, you're right, he's in high school, so he probably is sexually aware, and he's clearly, no matter how you cut it, he is a bit manipulative. Because he told the girls, no, it's okay. You get off here. I'll drive her. And then he parks the car. He's like, oh, no, don't worry. Don't get in the front seat. And then he comes in the back. All that stuff is definitely pushy and somewhat manipulative. And then and he's like, oh, let's play truth or dare. And then he's like trying to guide it. He's trying to get lucky. What happens though is he is trying to get lucky because he thinks, oh, I bet you I can with her. Because she seems like she wants to hang, she wants to be cool, all these things. He's not aware that she's in way the fuck over her head and that she's scared.
Which I would contend a regular boy would, one, recognize that, and two, not want to create that feeling in another human being.
Maybe. I just don't know what a regular boy is, I guess, because...
Well, think about what you did. I mean, what would you have done?
But I mean, we played all sorts of truth or dare games.
Not in a situation like that. So let's say you're an older boy and you're driving this younger girl who, isn't criminally younger than you. And you're thinking, I wonder if I can get with this girl. What would you have done?
Well, I guess... sadly, probably nothing. But I would have maybe...
Right. Nothing because you're worried that things are going to go weird. Like this guy was not afraid of it going weird.
Well, I would have been worried of rejection.
Well, that's what I mean by weird. Like you're just it's an unknown. He was totally unafraid of that. Like she clearly... This was a long scene, and so for those who haven't seen the movie, he gets in the back seat with this girl. She just wants to be taken home, and she's trying to be cool because she's trying to hang with the older kids.
But I think he felt okay. So
let me describe the scene. Yeah. Okay. So then he decides to. He starts off by saying, it's an extremely awkward, uncomfortable conversation that she is not freely participating in. And at some point, he says, let's play truth or dare.
But by the way, really quick pause. The whole night, you could describe it as an awkward conversation that she's not easily participating in.
Sure. Yeah. And the whole night prior to this moment, she is with 2 girls and 2 guys. Sure. And now it's just her and him, okay? So, and her and him have not really interacted much prior to this moment.
Right, but as far as the 2 boys, she interacted with him the most.
She interacted with him for 1 sentence, and he was a dick to her.
Right.
So he gets in the back seat. So there's been no goodwill between the 2 of them. Anyway, he gets in the back seat. He says, "Let's play truth or dare." And she's like, "I don't know, truth," because she's thinking, "I don't want to do a dare." And then he goes, "Okay, well, how far have you been with a guy or something?" And then there's this really funny response that she says. She's like, "Oh, I don't know,
third base
or something." And then she's like, "Whoa!" And she's like, "Oh, well, second base. I don't know." And then he's like, "Okay, well, what about for me?" And she's like, "Oh,
well, he says like, it's okay if you haven't done anything."
Okay, right. Yeah, well, whatever. So then she says, "Okay, fine, truth or dare," and he's like. He's like, "I choose dare." And then she says something like, "I dare you to eat this quarter."
Yeah.
"No, I dare you to put this quarter in your mouth."
Right.
Which I thought was hilarious, which is a good dare. And he's like, "Oh, come on." And then he does. So he doesn't do that. What he says is, well, how about you dare me to take my shirt off? And she's like, okay. And he's like,
well, I think she says, well, what do you want to do? Or
right.
like that. Yeah.
And he's like, well, how about you dare me to take my shirt off? And she's like, no, you don't have to do that. And he's like, well, come on. And she's like, well, if you want to, sure, take your shirt off. And so he takes his shirt off.
Right.
Now you're in a situation where as a woman, you're stuck in a car at night,
right,
with a boy who is bigger than you in his car. No one else is around. He's taken his shirt off. He doesn't have any intention of getting back in the front seat until this, it's a scary situation for her.
It is scary, but you can't assume, she shouldn't assume, like the right thing to do there is what she did, which is to set a boundary. And if she is unlucky, this is a psycho guy who's actually going to rape her. But the stats don't actually bear that that's the case.
But she was, you can't deny she was not traumatized by this event.
Oh, it might be traumatizing, but he might have been
traumatizing.
But he might have been traumatized too, right? Like
he was not traumatized.
Oh, he got rejected, right? In a pretty awkward way. Like
she was terrified and felt violated.
Well, she was terrified, probably
and felt violated.
Right? Okay, and then he felt completely rejected and exposed because he was shirtless.
So I'm just I'm gonna rewrite the scene, not because I don't want to rewrite the scene, because I thought it was a beautiful scene, but to demonstrate what normal people do.
Sure.
So he wants to get with her, and he's like, so what are you into? Oh, I don't know. I'm into YouTube videos. Oh, cool. Well, I think you're kind of cute. Oh, really? Okay. It just, yeah. So, get to her house. So you want to hang out sometime? Well, maybe. Okay. Well, give me your phone number. We can talk on the phone. That's what a normal person does. They don't get in the back seat, force the person to play truth or dare. She's clearly uncomfortable. Take your shirt off when she never asked to do that. And then at some point, and then it just escalates from there. I think the next dare is something.
Well, he says to her to take her shirt off.
Right, take your shirt off.
And then she says, "No, I'm not comfortable with that.
I'm not comfortable with that."
And then he stops and he gets back angry in the front seat and drives off.
No, she says, "I'm not comfortable with that." And then he puts hands on her. And then she said, "No."
Oh, okay, you're right.
Don't
Actually,
touch me.
Yes, okay,
He's
you're
a
right.
Fucking rapist, this guy.
Well, no, hold on. She said no, and he stopped.
Oh, man, I really think you need to rewatch this.
No, I just watched it. You can't penalize the guy for stopping. Because that's
I'm
the wrong
not penalizing him
message.
for stopping. I'm penalizing him for being a fucking creep.
Well, the other guy told her, the guy she likes said, "Do you suck dick?" And she's like, "Oh." And then she answers, she's like, "Oh yeah, and I'm really great at it." Like, is he not like, who asks right off the bat, do you give blowjobs? Like, that's so creepy and no, in that case it's okay because she liked them. But like the guy was saying like, "Hey, do you want to play truth or dare?" The other guy's like, "Do you give blowjobs?"
I think it's clear that you are not empathizing with her experience and other girls
but of course,
in this situation.
This is my point. Of course I'm empathizing with her. I feel that, of course she was terrified and she was in way over her head. But what I'm trying to say is that...
So she shouldn't have been there. She asked for it.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
But she shouldn't have been there. She was...
Of course not.
So it's her fault that she was terrorized.
No, I never said any of that.
So whose fault is it that she was terrorized?
The fault that she was terrorized in this case is the approach that the guy took.
He chose an approach that was one of terror.
Yeah, but sure. But what I'm trying to say is like, I want to draw a line. I'm not
going to let him off the hook for choosing a terrorist approach of sex with this girl.
And that's okay to like educate him and say like, look, that's not how you can approach people.
Great.
Right?
Educate. But I'm not going to fucking let a rapist off the hook.
Well, I'm saying he's not a rapist. She said no and he stopped.
You can say he's not a rapist. He sexually assaulted her in a...
Oh my God, man. The other guy was asking for her nudes and asked if she gives blowjobs. Yeah. Is that sexual assault?
it could be argued, but no, because he was just a creeper, and
Right,
I don't
but-
think he made her feel uncomfortable.
Because she liked him.
No, because he never actually tried to put hands on her.
Well, fine, but you got to admit she was in over her head in that
the other guy never
conversation.
trapped her in the back of a car and forced her to play a truth or dare game and forced her to agree to
Physically, I agree with you. At the same time, the fact that he asked her if she gives blowjobs put her in way over her head again. She ended up going on YouTube and trying to look at videos that actually exposed her to stuff that she might not have been ready to deal with.
The dude was a creep. I mean,
And then she actually was in her head trying to think, okay, like she felt the pressure of like, oh, I guess this is something I have to do, when clearly she was not ready to go down that route. So what I'm trying to say is like, it's more gray than just this guy's a rapist. I think that kid is clearly awkward, misinformed.
well, if we're gonna have
all those
a
things.
spectrum of Jeffrey Dahmer, and sure, he's not a Jeffrey Dahmer, bro.
And I think you can dial that way back down.
You can
and still
dial it
say
way
no.
back down and say that
Because
he's
she said no, and he did stop. And
Yeah.
so that's a redeemable kid. You can redeem him. You can teach him better.
I find it interesting that I can say that he did something sexually assaultive to her, and all you can do is say, but he's not all evil. At what point did I say he was all evil?
I think what ends up happening is there's a lot of...
perfectly good people.
But I didn't say you said he was all evil. You called him a rapist.
Yeah.
And I'm saying he's not
That's
a
my
rapist.
definition. I have a different
We have a
definition.
different definition. And what I think is this, now I'm projecting onto this community, which I don't know, maybe I don't speak for them, but I do feel there is a set of these incels or the men going their own way or whatever it is, that this is the part I think they end up falling down on, and they don't get the right help, is that it's an all or nothing.
Sure.
And there's no education to help them.
Look, plenty of perfectly good meaning dudes who are misinformed or bad with social cues will do things that are terrorizing to other people. And I don't want to string them up by a rope. I don't want to throw them off a cliff, but there are people out there who are being regularly traumatized by this kind of behavior. And most boys don't do stuff like this, and it needs to be called out. Plenty of incels and the, men going their own way people, I don't think they would do something like this. I don't think they would be this. I don't know how long the scene is, 10 minutes, 7 minutes or something, however long. It's several minutes of him with several Ys in the road where he could have pulled out and been like, okay, she's not into this, or threw something out a little bit more soft.
So if
he was on a one-way mission.
Absolutely.
And he was forcing something.
If he was well educated, informed, whatever, and the first thing would have been like, oh, absolutely, let's go drop her off first. That's the first thing. You don't even put yourself in a weird position like that, because I guess he's not an adult, but whatever. She's the young one. They're supposed to be taking good care of her, and her friend is the older girl, not him. So absolutely, you take her home first. That's the first step. The second step is you just take her home. You want to make conversation? Great, fine.
That's my point. If you like her,
so I'm not disagreeing with any of that. You don't park the fucking car. You don't. You just drive her home.
Right.
All of that is true.
Even if you like her, and
all of
even
that
if
is
you
true.
hit on her.
It's just that I'm trying to present...
You direct message her later that night. You say, hey, I like you. Want to hang out.
I guess if for no other reason, here's what I'm saying. If you think that his behavior was rare and really rapey, and I believe more than people than you think would take an approach like that.
I agree that a lot of guys will dip into it, kind of, but he took it down a road that was, can I see someone getting into the back seat and going like, ooh, like maybe something can happen? Sure, I could see that happening. He did like 10 things in a row in one direction with several data points saying, this girl's not into this. She's not into it. She's so uncomfortable.
But she
yes. doesn't want to be doing this. And and what's interesting is that the point that he turned was as he's putting hands on her. Not only does she say no, but she she physically flips out in that moment. She's like, no. And then the kicker is, so at that point, I actually thought, I mean, if I was writing this movie, I would have made it more gray by afterwards. He would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You know, I didn't know. But Bo Burnham wrote it into the script where the kid doubles down. So as he's driving her home,
he's upset.
He's punishing her and being really mean to her. I was only doing this because I wanted you to be prepared for other guys like me in the future. You know?
No, he actually goes, he reveals his psychology entirely. And that's what I was saying, the men going their own way, whatever. Because he goes, see, because what's going to happen, he basically says, in so many words, you're going to lose it to the alpha male, and then he's going to dump you, and you're going to be crying. And I was trying to save you from that, because he knows he's not the alpha. He knows he's like the guy who's trying to get some, right?
But my God, dude, have you ever, just think back to your life when you were immature and stupid and like, you know, horny as all get out. Would you have ever said such a thing?
Of course not.
Because you're not like him.
But I think there's a lot of hymns.
There are a lot of hymns,
and they're not. And the thing is, there is.
So if he wasn't fully on board with the notion, or even getting off on the terrorizing of his sexual targets, then afterwards he would have been like, at the very least, he would have said nothing.
Yeah, but remember, he's a teenager whose hurt feelings are now hurt.
But all he's got to do is be like, you know, I'm sorry, I thought you were into it.
Yeah, and a mature person in that moment would say that.
No, not a mature, just a regular person of his age would say something to the effect of like, look, I thought you were into it, you know, I guess you weren't.
Dude, when I was in school, not
that would erase the terror that he put her through.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, like, in terms of the character profile that was written by Bo Burnham, the way that he reacted afterwards confirmed to me that this guy was indeed a problematic human being and not normal. This guy is not a normal person.
So when I was in school around that age, I would regularly see guys in older grades demeaning some of the guys, not all, but some of the guys in my grade, abusing them physically, verbally, making fun of them, punching them, all these things. Some of the guys in my grade definitely would tease and make fun and like verbally and psychologically abuse other people. It wasn't the majority, but there were enough of them. And this was a very common thing. And so I'm saying that, like, I don't know that, like, at that age, a lot of kids have the wherewithal to A, not even take those steps, B, apologize when they've done something wrong. And so unfortunately, because where would they have learned it? Like they would have had to learn it at home because they wouldn't have learned it at school. Right?
Sure. Yeah, the guy probably was sexually assaulted himself.
Or something, right?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm saying, like, I'm not excusing, of course she felt terrible. I feel terrible in that scene for her. It's just that, like, I also felt bad for the guy because I was like, man, this poor soul has no clue.
Sure, you can feel bad for him, and at the same time, recognize that what he did was sexual assault.
And I don't agree with that. Like, I don't agree that it was sexual assault.
Assaultive.
He was being extremely pushy and crossing boundaries, and he had to be told extremely firmly no before he got the point.
Would most 8th grade girls in a situation like that run home and cry their eyes out and worry about other boys harming them in the future?
Could be.
Yeah. That's the definition of trauma and victimization. That's it. It's so unnecessary.
But there's so many.
It's fine to ask someone, "Would you like to make out?" Okay.
But there's so many
girls. It's not fine to do so in a way that makes someone afraid for their life.
Right. But we teach kids, you have to say no, and you teach the other kids, when someone says no, you stop. She said no, which is great. She said no firmly, and he stopped. And like, that's important.
Great. And I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
If he didn't, he'd be a worse human being.
Well, of course. And so like,
So this person only stabbed 5 people.
No, he didn't
at
stab.
the McDonald's.
No, there were no stabbings.
But Berto, he didn't stab 6 people.
No, the better analogy.
We have to look at that, like that he only stabbed 5 people. No. He's a good person. Someone might have stabbed him before.
No, the better analogy is that a kid who's never done this before plans to rob a house with his friend. They get all the way to like where they're gonna do it, and then something stops him and he doesn't do it.
That's a bad analogy. A better analogy is he actually breaks into the house and he's on his way out the door.
Well, that's a crime, breaking and entering. He can go to jail for that.
Well, but you chose that analogy.
Yeah, but I'm saying he didn't actually break the law.
I'm not. Who cares about the fucking law?
Well, I do, because if he had not stopped at no, then he would have been breaking the law.
The law is fine, but I don't think we should be defining our moral judgment on the law. Calling someone a name or marrying someone for their money and then making them feel like shit is not against the law.
Sure, but the law matters for like you take a dogmatic stance to what it means to say, you know, what evolutionary psychology means or things like that. It's like terms matter to you in some cases. Rape is legally defined.
The law has defined sexual assault. True.
Sure.
And it's actually illegal to do things physically that make other people feel terrified.
Okay, and from that perspective, maybe he did cross a legal boundary. But I am the reason I'm trying to die on this hill for this kid is because I think we throw away some of the bathwater with the baby that we wanted to throw away. If we are zero tolerance all around.
Well, define zero tolerance. Like, are you saying that me calling it sexually assaultive? At what point did I say we should kill him? At what point did I say he should even go to jail? At what point did I say anything of consequence? I'm just labeling it what it is.
Right. So let's say that this story came out in their community. And he was labeled, forget the law for a second, but he was labeled as
our society
rapist.
Is so backward when it comes to anything sexual that, he would be unduly stigmatized and it would ruin his life. Well, that's the first time you've mentioned this.
Well, sure, but I'm saying that is what I say. That's what I'm saying.
Is defending him and saying that he's normal and that I'm wrong for labeling him a person who has committed a sexual assault.
Well, at least a rapist, you know. And I'm not defending his actions. I'm saying, hey, I also feel bad for him because he's lost. He needs a better way to operate.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't know how to get sexual satisfaction.
95% of sexual assaults are committed by people of that description.
Right.
And, and I have compassion for those people. I do.
Right.
But I'm not going to pussyfoot around what happened in that scene, which was sexually assaultive. And she was traumatized by that. She went home crying. And that was another scene where they had the music very effective. And then the dad comes upstairs and is trying to, he's like, oh my God, what's wrong? And he's trying to console her. And she's rejecting of the dad because, she's just so confused and embarrassed and upset and, just humiliated. And it was a very effective scene for that reason, that it was in the gray zone. An easier trope scene would be that he actually, took her clothes off and, had sex with her against her will or grabbed her somewhere, that would have been a more sort of clear scene of an assault. But the more we talk about it, I think the mastery of this scene is that apparently it can be seen as like, well, it was somewhat normal. And my point is that that sort of behavior needs to be clearly labeled by us. Now, at the same time, do we over-stigmatize people who are labeled as people who have done things like this? Absolutely. I mean, if he were convicted of a crime, he would be on the sexual offenders list for the rest of his life in some communities. The same category as people who have raped 50 children
Right.
in their own daycare. You know what I mean? They would be in the same the same cultural category. You know, that you just, oh, they're a rapist. You know, they're in that category. And yeah, that's absolutely wrong.
Right.
And it's not helpful. They would also stigmatize them as some sort of evil, unredeemable character, which is also wrong. But at the same time, I'm not going to look at that behavior and be like, yeah, that's normal behavior, or that's not assaultive behavior.
And I would have zero disagreement that we need to address that behavior and educate those kids and educate those people to not behave that way.
Absolutely. And we're not.
Right.
And we're not.
Right.
And most kids without that education would not do the things that he did. I never did when I can't think of anything I did anything close to that, sort of behavior. And I don't think you did either.
Well, for one thing, I mean, it's hard for me to relate to the scene in several ways, because for one thing, every girl that I dated or was into or anything was at most 1 year younger than me. And usually it was either my same grade or in fact older, right? So it's hard for me to relate to like an 8th grader girl when I'm in high school, right? So that part is a bit
so
hard.
right there, you're different than him.
But my girlfriend in high school dated 29-year-olds. So I knew it was very common for girls in high school that were hot to date much older guys who were out of high school. Now, I'm not saying that was right. And if they were having sex, that was actually illegal. But another thing, it is illegal to send nudes of underage kids, even if you're an underage kid.
Right.
That scene where she's like, I have nudes, and he's like, yeah. That scene, if pictures had exchanged, would have actually been, they would have been both breaking the law.
Right.
And they could both be prosecuted.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what I'm getting at is I can't quite relate to it. And no, I would have never fucking done that, because he is being extremely manipulative, and he's setting up this weird, creepy situation where he's pulling over and all these things. And the part where I'm having empathy, and I only started having empathy since you told me to have empathy. No, the part that I'm having empathy is I'm going, that poor SOB. He's sitting there. He doesn't know how to get any action. And the closest he can think of as a plan is take the 8th grader home that talked to him once, pull over and try to play truth or dare. Oh my God, how misinformed. And certainly as soon as he reached over to her, okay, now you're being a dangerous asshole. Sure. And then where I say, okay, let's not throw him in jail yet, is she said no, he stopped, and like, let's grab him aside and educate him.
Yeah, I never said jail. I don't care about jail. I never brought up the law. I don't care. That's for another kind of conversation, I suppose. But yeah, okay.
Because if this had been a boss and an underling, we're talking about a completely different situation. 2 adults, boss and an underling, and now we're immediately talking about harassment.
How is that any different?
Because there is first of all, they're both adults.
The power differential in that situation is probably more pronounced than 2 adults who work together, depending on the situation.
No, because I think that
he's older. He has a car.
Yeah, but she has no allegiance to him.
He can't get home. She can't get home.
No, I realize that, but I'm saying
she can't run out of the car. He's bigger. He's doing some.
But
really
there are no
things
implications outside of that scenario that she owes him nothing. It does not depend on him for anything in her life.
And at the same time, and people at work are just as susceptible to this kind of or just it can be a similar terror.
Kirk, hold on.
If you don't even know what I'm going to say.
Okay.
So she was in a situation where it was reasonable for her to be terrified, especially as it progressed.
Yes.
When he first gets into the backseat of the car, and she's not. She doesn't seem very terrified at that first. She's just kind of like, huh? This is kind of, she seems more socially scared than anything else. And she's socially scared all the time. She's just like, oh God, how do I answer this question? But pretty quickly, it starts to become physically scary for her, and it escalates to the point where she's like, "No, don't touch me," you know. And I think she was reasonable to be afraid.
Oh, completely. What I'm trying to say is different. If you had a scene in a movie where a boss is driving his employee home, his female employee home. You know, boss. It doesn't even have to be female. Just boss is driving the employee home, and he or she pulls over, and says, "Oh, I'll get in the back seat." At that moment, he is breaking the ethics of his office.
Totally.
And it's already getting into... Now, there's a huge difference here. If in the scene that we watched in this movie, even though they're 8th grade in high school, which is a big difference, if she had actually been into it and they actually played Truth or Dare and they like fooled around a little bit, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Totally.
But in the boss-employee situation, we still would have to have this conversation.
In every social encounter, we have to make sure that everyone is on board.
Well,
I don't see how the categorization makes sense.
Because you could still have gone along with it and then still go to HR and say,
well, you could falsely make up a story.
Not falsely. You could just say like,
well, I
don't feel comfortable working with him now because we did this.
Yeah.
Right?
And
you would get in trouble.
Right. Because it's against policy, but it wouldn't necessarily be immoral. So in your scenario, which I think is maybe good to point out, so say she really likes him, and so he gets in the backseat of the car, and she's into it. She's like, "Oh man, I've had a crush on him.
Yeah,
I'm so glad he's."
She was ready to quote unquote blow the other guy, right? She was practicing on it, but I'm just saying like that is. No,
I'm talking about someone at work now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So the woman, I have this crush on this guy. I have a crush on my boss.
Yeah.
For 12 months. He'll never like me, but man, if it ever came down to it, right. I would make out with him, and I'm sex positive. I don't care. I'll have a one night stand with him. I don't care.
Right.
And so, oh my God, he's in the back seat. Let's go for it. 2 days later, she's like, shit, I feel uncomfortable now.
Yeah.
I go to HR. He gets fired.
Yep.
Well, okay, but that's not a sexual assault. That's a policy violation.
Yeah, but sure, fine. But he should have known better, and she could have claimed harassment.
Yes, anyone at any time can claim a sexual assault has happened. So that's a
or harassment at least,
Well, right, which is a sexual assault. Harassment is a form of sexual assault. So anyone can make that claim and can use the policies in whatever way they want to. But the difference is that when you engage in a sexual encounter or you proposition someone in such a way that they feel trapped, which is, pretty specific, and most people do not engage in that kind of targeting behavior towards other people. When you do that, that's wrong. And and whether you're a 12th grader or you're a boss or you're a man or a woman or, it doesn't matter. Even if you're married and you target your spouse and make them feel trapped, it's not right. It's immoral. I don't know what laws should be passed about that, but I'm just saying it needs to be called out.
Totally. In this scenario, in this movie, they are closer to being peers, societally, if you will, than a boss and an employee.
Okay. I
just like
know.
A teacher and a student are like same scene. The teacher is driving, the students in the back.
It depends on the workplace, honestly.
Right, but now let's do teacher and student. Right. Actually, that's hard because then it's actually like the age thing.
Well, I don't know if it's so important, honestly.
Fine, it's not that important. But the only point I was trying to make is that the same scene in a different context can vary how we feel about each of the participants. So
it's interesting that in the boss employee instance, somehow, are you saying you feel more certain of its wrongness or something?
Well, let's take a different approach.
But answer that question, because
I mean, I think that at the very least,
somehow with a boss and an employee, it seems more wrong to you.
Well, it seems immediately the boss should know better already. Because you need to know better.
Because the policy.
Well, because you're older, you're an adult, and you've been through more life experiences, and you are their boss, and so you should know better, right? And this is something
because
that
of social mores around bosses with employees.
Before the 90s, no one knew this. Now everyone's more aware of it. Oh, okay, well, geez, I shouldn't do that,
Okay.
I mean, like before the 90s, it was probably like, what are you talking about?
But
Why
see
can't
that,
I pull over?
but this is kind of part of the problem is that the people who don't understand, i.e., a lot of men and a lot of people on the right, is that it's not about rules. The rules are only there to guide the behavior for people who don't fucking understand. And so you have to impose a rule so that people follow it who wouldn't otherwise because they don't get it or they don't care. So the rule is the moral quality of not making other people feel trapped and uncomfortable and forced and scared and terrorized and harmed and violated. That is the moral.
But you
don't do that to other people. That's not cool. That's immoral. And then, okay, now we have, because people don't get it, we have to pass laws and HR policies because people won't follow the moral or they don't get it enough or something. But the moral is the rule. It doesn't, so you can have a boss and an employee have sex and it could be morally fine and against HR.
Yeah.
But you can have a 12th grader and an 8th grader have a wonderful, free, loving, mutual respecting relationship, and it could be against the law. We could get into the whole like pedophile thing, which I'm. Well,
you could add this scene. Imagine a female high schooler is driving the 8th grade boy, and he's socially awkward or whatever, but he's certainly sexually awakened because he has a crush on another girl or something. Same thing. She pulls over, gets in the back, tries to play truth or dare, and he's definitely not going along with it in the same way. And then she finally grabs him, and he's like, no, and then she drives off. Same exact scenario. All of the things she did are still not good. Like she still needs to learn not to approach it that way. But again, I'm still not gonna be like, you're a rapist. I'm gonna be like, all right, we need to like teach you more shit,
And a sexual assault would have occurred.
Yeah. Well, in your definition, sure. Yeah.
In most people's definition, when you proposition someone for sex especially over a span of time, and it's extremely pushy and causes someone to scream out in terror and say, no, that's a sexual assault by most people's definitions of anyone who understands what the nature of sexual assault is. Okay. Now, if you want to put it on a spectrum, it's on the lighter end of the spectrum. You're not holding a knife to her throat. You didn't slap her around. You didn't threaten her life. So, sure. But,
there's a scene in Alpha Dog, which was one of my
if we switch the genders, it's just as bad. And as we talked about in the woman-on-woman sexual assault episode, is 100% just as terrorizing and traumatizing and morally wrong as if a man was doing it. As if it was an older girl and a young boy, can absolutely be just as horrible and traumatizing and wrong,
right?
And should be reacted to in exactly the same way. And of course, our society doesn't, because it's like, oh, it's an older girl, and wouldn't he want to? And boys can't be traumatized in that way. And, so it means nothing to me to switch the genders.
Right. And it shouldn't. And in the movie Alpha Dog, the younger kid who is being carried, he's been carried along by the older kids because they have him as a hostage because his older brother owes them money. And there's these two older girls that seduce him and have him have sex. Now, in this case, it was presented in a positive light, and he ends up having a grin about it, like, oh, he was like deflowered by these older girls, right? But if his reaction had been negative in any way, like we'd say, oh, was he like raped? Like, what was that? So the subtlety here is like how he felt about it actually matters.
Yeah.
But their approach could have been the same exact approach. Like he's being kidnapped by the other guys, right? But they're treating him nice, so he's kind of like going along with it. They're trying to like seduce him and take his virginity.
Yeah.
And they're older than him.
Yeah.
But he goes along with it, and then in the end has a grin about it.
Yeah. Because it happened to be retrospectively consensual.
Well, that's not good.
No.
We still need to educate them better.
Right.
And so in the end, I am in complete agreement about that's not the right way to approach this. That's too abusive. Now, you should not, look, she's already uncomfortable. Can't you recognize
here's a very easy shortcut. Just take a breath and ask the other person if they want to continue.
Yes.
Just fucking ask.
Yes.
Would you like to continue this?
Yes.
Or would you like to go home?
Right.
And she probably would have said, I'd like to go home now.
Yes.
That's it doesn't take a genius to just stop and say, so are you into this or do you want to go home? Right. It's the same as like, I'm going to feed you this spaghetti. You better like it.
Right.
How about just say, do you want to eat the spaghetti?
Right.
It's not hard to ask the question. And there's a reason why this guy didn't ask that question, because he didn't want to know the answer. So
that's right.
Okay.
We beat that one to death.
Yeah, that was interesting. So I just want to talk about one anecdote from 8th grade that it reminded me of for myself, that because this movie really exemplifies in full detail the self-consciousness of being in middle school. I mean, that's why everyone hates middle school, because it's just like you're the most self-conscious at that time, you know? And
that's what grades is middle school considered?
6 through 8.
6 through 8. Okay.
Yeah. So the memory of that, there's two memories that popped in my head. One was that my dad got a video camera when I was in like 6th grade or something. Mm-hmm. And so in 8th grade, Christmas morning, my dad's filming everything. You might have seen some of the videos.
Yeah, I've seen some of the videos.
So my dad would film like 5 hours of Christmas morning, and then I would edit it down to like 1 minute, which is really only the parts worth watching. But there's this one scene. So I played trumpet when I was a kid. I loved playing trumpet.
You did?
Yeah, it was my first musical instrument. Well, I played recorder, and I was pretty much into recorder. And then
why is it called the recorder?
I don't know.
It's bizarre.
It is weird. And then I played trumpet, and I got really good at it, and really liked it. I would listen to like Miles Davis and Maynard Ferguson.
What?
Yeah,
So you were into it.
Yeah,
for big time.
Yeah, and then at some point I just dropped it, but. Super into it, and I was renting a trumpet because
they're expensive, right?
They're expensive.
Yeah.
And my parents, they had to really think about how they spent their money. The 4 kids, blah blah blah.
Totally.
And at that time, they had 2 kids in college, and so they couldn't buy me a trumpet. But Christmas morning, they're like, "Okay, Kirk, your most exciting gift is in the closet." And they turn on the video camera, and you can see me in the video camera. I'm just like, "Oh God!" Like everyone's watching me. And so I go to the closet, and I see it, and I know in my heart I'm bursting. I'm like, it's a trumpet. I got a trumpet, my own trumpet. I don't have to rent a nasty, because these trumpets that you rented were they were old,
right,
and had been beaten up, And this is a brand new trumpet, probably never been played. And I open up the case, and you get your own case too, which is kind of cool. And it's a distinctive kind of normally, trumpets, just think of that golden brassy color. This one had a deeper red color to it. Like it was just slightly off in color. So it was very signaling of like, this ain't no rental.
Wow.
But anyway, I look at it, and it's just shiny and new, no dents. And I'm just bursting. I'm just like, oh my God, a trumpet. I know this, but my face, I'm not giving any expression with my face. And my parents are like, you can hear them behind the camera, and they're like, no, come over here, because I'm over by the closet. And so I'm like, okay. And so I pick up the trumpet, and you see me kind of walking over to him, and I plop it down in front of the camera, and I'm just sort of staring at the trumpet, And I know what I'm thinking is just like, can I just go away now? Can I just go to my room, and play this thing in private, And my parents are like, play it.
Play it for the camera.
You play a note or something, do something. Say thank you, you piece of shit. You know what I mean? But I'm not. And so I'm like, so there's this, like, I have, every once in a while I force myself to watch this scene. It is the cringiest of all cringy things. I'm like, I say something like, I can't, God, like it's
like Napoleon Dynamite,
total Napoleon Dynamite. And I can't remember what I said, but I was a dick, I was just like, I said something like, I can't right now, like I don't have my mouthpiece or something.
Oh no,
something real nasty, just total ingrate,
That hurts.
Yeah. and then nothing after that of just like, well, thanks for, like, I really like it, or
no,
or hug my parents.
Oh no,
like nothing.
Oh, I'm feeling the pain now.
Right?
Yeah.
Just I get the trumpet. And my parents,
they're so excited to get.
They're excited. They spent all their hard-earned cash on this fucking thing.
Right.
And they had prepared. My parents go all out on Christmas. You know what I mean? Like all my friends are always jealous about everything that I got, and and they weren't rich. You know what I mean?
Right.
They hide the trumpet in the closet.
Right. They take extra steps.
All these things. They set it up, and then I'm just this total dick bag. In the moment. And so this movie exemplifies that for me, because there's so many scenes when she's with the dad and she's
being a dick.
She's just being a total dick to him. And I mean, all she has to, like in that dinner scene, all she has to do is like, okay, just have a 2-minute conversation, just entertain him for 2 minutes.
Oh, and then he starts like saying nice things about her, and she's like, "Oh God, stop!"
Yeah,
she can't handle it.
Right. And when he was spying on her in the mall.
Oh my gosh, she goes ballistic.
And she just completely rejects him as super mean to him. Do you have any stories like this from that time? Yeah, I mean, you had the 11th grade story, but
yeah. Well, so actually, I used to feel really embarrassed by my dad, and it was something like if my friends came over, I was always like, oh, what is he gonna say? What is he gonna say? Oh, this is so embarrassing, And when we would go out anywhere, like the store, like he'd strike up conversation with someone, like the cashier or something. I'm like, God, stop talking! Like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
Do you think you were a dick?
I never said any. Well, no, that's not. I probably did say stuff, but I wasn't I wouldn't like yell, because the one thing he wouldn't do is he wouldn't let me be like a dick. Like,
well, here's the problem. Like, if you would have asked me, if I had done anything like this in the 8th grade, I would have said, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But the problem is I have videotape. Like, there's videotape of me being a dick to my younger brother. Because we would do a lot of projects together, or he would. My younger brother's like 6 or 7 years younger than me. He would always sort of harangue me into like, Kirk, can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? And like, I'd just be like, okay, fine. And I would proceed to just be a dick older brother at that age. There's something about 7th, 8th grade that just has that.
I see
that sort of energy.
I'm sure that if I had video, there were probably many cringeworthy moments.
Right. So and that's that scene. When I saw that trumpet scene I probably saw it for the first time like 20 years ago when I was like pulling out old VHS tapes and stuff. And I remember distinctly thinking, I'm so glad I have this, because I would never have thought I was like that. Oh, wow. Because who dedicates that to long-term memory? Sure. Especially from my own perspective, I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
The other thing is when you ask my family, if you just went up to my mom and dad and said, was Kirk ever kind of a snot when he was in the 8th grade?
No.
You're right. And they believe it.
Right.
They believe it. They'd be like, never. In
fact,
I've had arguments with my parents. I'm like, no.
Because your parents, by the way, are the nicest people.
Well, and
to me, anyways.
They are. And parents just want to love, like this dad. The whole movie, she's being a dick, and he just...
You're awesome. You're the best.
He just can't get over how much he loves her and respects her and just is enamored by her, the way that parents are.
Right.
And so, especially as time goes on, so I feel like I have the benefit of actual videotaping, and the evidence of it all.
Right.
And I wonder if we could see, because you didn't have a video camera back then, right?
No.
Yeah.
I do remember one instance that was actually not directed towards my dad, and I was probably in 6th grade, maybe, but maybe it might have been 7th grade. So my aunt brought me a color computer from the States, but I didn't know this. This was a surprise. So I came home. That
one you bought, the other one?
I have the 3rd version, which is the one my mom bought me later. But I came home from school one day, and I knew my aunt had arrived from the United States.
Is it a Commodore?
No, it's a Tandy.
Oh, Tandy.
Radio Shack Tandy color computer. Yeah. I came home from school. I knew my aunt had arrived from the United States, so I was super excited to see her. And when I get home, she's there. I'm like, oh my gosh, hi, hola tia, blah, blah, blah. All right, great time. Now, she's like, hey, you might want to go upstairs and check go to your grandparents' room. So I'm like, all right. So I run upstairs, and in there is my cousin, Diego. And as I walk in, I look over at the TV, and my mind is instantly blown because I see this glorious video game happening on the screen of my grandparents' TV. And I'm like, what is this? Now, little background. My cousin Diego is older than me. He's 8 years older, I think. And at this time, I had been going to downtown Bogota with my dad. This was probably the summer. Yeah, it was probably the summer, so I didn't have school. I was going downtown, and I was taking these computer classes in this like program that the government offered. Because at my school, they hadn't yet offered the classes, so I was taking like these classes. My cousin was going to the same classes. Okay, so we were both like there. But he's 8 years older than me. I come upstairs, he's playing this game, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And then he's like, oh, it's my new computer. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this mix of like, that's amazing and so jealous, right? I'm like, that's crazy. And I'm like, what can it do? He's like, and then he just starts throwing out lingo. And he's like, oh, it could do basic, logo, Lisp. And he's like, Fortran, and he names all these languages. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, that's crazy. And he just has me going. My aunt comes upstairs, and I'm like, oh my God, the computer you got my cousin is amazing. And she's like, what? No, that's computer for you. And then I'm like, what? And then so I'm super excited about it. But then, and I only thought about this years later, I'm such a dick to my cousin. Because I'm like, it's not your computer, it's my computer. And like, it didn't dawn, of course, at that time, oh my gosh, that must have been so lame for him. Because here he is, he's still probably like, he was probably 18 at the time or 17. So like not a full adult yet.
Well, wait, so did you ridicule him?
Well, I was kind of like teasing him about the fact that it wasn't in fact his computer. It was my computer.
Did he have less access to aunts with that kind of money or something?
Yes. Even though it was his aunt, I got the computer.
Oh, it was his aunt.
Yeah, it was both of our aunt. Oh. And I got the computer. And we both were interested in computers.
Yeah.
And I was just I
don't know. I'm not convinced. I feel like if he's 8 years older.
No, right. And so he was totally gracious about it.
He was razzing
and he was razzing me, totally. It's just that in retrospect, I thought, oh man, that must have been hard for him. Because
if that's the best you could come up with, fuck you, man. Because I could actually see you being a super nice 8th grader for one. So I feel like I'm out on a limb here. Like
I was very annoying though. I was very annoying.
I can see that, yes. But I can't see you like being a dick. But I wish you had a video camera that would catch you being a dick to people.
Sure.
That I wonder, like, what about your younger brother?
Yeah, I was jerky.
Right?
Yeah, I definitely made him, I've told you stories. Like I made him think things were one way when they weren't. I would constantly make bets with him, and then I would manipulate the facts to win the bets.
Right.
I would certainly because
he's like what?
4 years younger than me.
Okay. And
so at that age, like when I'm 13, dude, I'm running like the game, and he's like, what? And he looked up to me. He idolized me.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so just some criticism of the movie is that its R rating is ridiculous.
It was rated R?
Yeah. The MPAA is ridiculous.
Wait a minute. There are some, I guess PG-13 maybe.
So, and here's why, quote unquote, because of some swearing, or this isn't the quote, but this is basically what they're saying is because there's some swearing, which is ridiculous. And a YouTube search for blowjob tutorials.
Yeah, right.
And then the scene with the older boy, which has sexual, content to it. Boyhood was also rated R, by the way. Yeah. But get this list of movies that were rated PG-13 by the MPAA. The Expendables 3.
Jesus, dude.
Do you know how many people get blown to bits?
No, that is the state of affairs. If there's violence, it's cool.
Taken is PG-13.
Jesus, that's traumatizing.
Taken. This is a movie.
That's traumatizing.
That, it is.
It's okay though.
That's dark.
No, heads blown off, cool.
Yeah.
Sex talk, not cool.
10 Cloverfield Lane, PG-13. This is about a girl who gets abducted, is tied up in a basement by a man.
No. By the way, this is my point. Like, wouldn't it be useful for 8th graders and high schoolers to watch this movie?
That's the whole point. Yes. Everyone should, at least 13-year-olds should be seeing this movie.
But when I'm saying like no one gets the right education is because of this kind of bullshit. Yeah. You barely get a sex ed class, and then you can't watch any movies with sexual content in them.
Right. Yeah. The MPAA is ridiculous. I mean, The Expendables. Do 13-year-olds need to watch The Expendables? Is that the world we live in, where we want 13-year-olds to watch The Expendables but not 8th grade?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that maybe I'm messed up. Because like I watched Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was like 5 years old.
Sure, but think about the amount of death that happens in that movie.
In The Expendables, yeah.
There's the guy who gets chewed up by the propeller, but you don't see it.
At the very least, I'm not arguing that you shouldn't let some kids watch violent movies. I'm saying that it's ridiculous to not let them watch this movie.
And it's so backward because in our society, aren't we concerned about kids with guns? And like,
no,
is that not a concern of ours?
No.
Are we not concerned about kids being violent?
Because I feel like the saying is, people don't kill people, guns. Isn't that the saying?
Yeah.
So people are not part of the equation, right?
Yeah. So it's just bizarre, the whole MPAA thing. It's known to be a ridiculous
I now
system.
remember there was a news article about that the actress can't watch her own movie, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without parent, right.
Actually,
can you? Is rated R where you can go with a parent or no?
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. If a parent approves,
but how
like
awkward
rated,
would it be to watch?
NC-17 is like a hard line.
Right.
Like you can't even expose your kids to it.
But wouldn't it be awkward to watch this movie with your parent?
Totally. Especially if you're in the 8th grade and you're on your phone all the time.
Right.
But like, so I'm curious to the listeners how they feel about this movie. 1, 2, if you're a parent or if you're an 8th grader, I just want to hear stories about, going to this movie with people, and because it really puts your face in it. The other thing I'm curious about are people's stories in the 8th grade, because I really feel like Humberto left me out on a lurch here. And I feel like I can't be the only dick in 8th grade, So send me your cringe-worthy moments. What's the final word, Berto?
Well, one thing that did stand out is I have this kind of preconceived notion that because of phones and in the internet, kids these days, but I actually found this way more relatable than I would have thought, in spite of there being phones and internet constantly throughout the movie. In other words, the behaviors and interactions actually still seemed very familiar.
Right, because they are.
Yeah.
And that's a great point that I forgot to mention, which is that the movie doesn't demonize phones.
No.
You definitely can, as if you're a parent, you can relate to the annoyance of your kid being on their phone all the time. But Bo Burnham did not write this movie as an attack on kids and phones. That's not the message. Is not. She doesn't throw down her phone or anything,
She does throw the phone for a completely different reason.
Yeah.
And by the way,
that was so funny.
The one outlet she does have is recording YouTube videos.
Right.
And unfortunately, at one point she feels like she's so depressed that she can't even do it anymore. But the guy that she goes on the date with at the end is like, I like your videos.
Yeah.
You're so put together.
Yeah. That scene was so the scene where she throws the phone was just hilarious.
Yeah.
The date with the chicken nuggets was just the Szechuan sauce with Rick and Morty and stuff. I just was dying.
And it's funny because she managed to find a boy that was more awkward than her.
But like less insecure, less in his head.
That's fair. He reminded me of Rushmore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Max.
The scene with the banana was just hilarious when she throws the banana at him, at the dad.
Because the dad's like, I thought you didn't like bananas. In fact, I think I made a note of it. He's like, fine, I don't like bananas.
It was so beautiful because he's like, wait, I think you yelled at me about the banana thing, and wait, what?
By the way, this is the American Pie moment done in a subtle way.
Right.
It's great.
Totally. And like believable. The scene where she crawls over and flirts with the cool kid during the drill.
That was, there were 2 moments in the movie that were very shocking given her character. Yeah. That was one of them.
Right. But, you know, I thought it was totally relatable.
Yeah, totally.
Like I remember people doing things like that.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was just like, wow, she actually took a chance here.
Yeah.
And the other one was the karaoke.
Right.
We didn't hear her. She might have done terrible.
Right.
But she did it.
Right. So that was another great scene because, but it made sense given the character because she's sitting there. She's like, come get me now, Dad. Now I need to go. And then the cute boy comes around the corner. He's like, hey.
Everyone's in the other room.
Everyone's in the other room. And she's like, he wants me in there.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't catch that
So
part.
she runs in there and then they, you know, he does that musical sequence or style. And you don't hear her singing. It's sort of slow-mo. And another director would have made her either sing it really great, and a couple kids would look at each other and go like, "Ooh,
hey, maybe it's not so bad.
She's cool."
Yeah.
Or go the other direction where she bombs it, and everyone's like, "Ew."
Geez, right.
They just sort of play it off like, you know what?
She just did it.
She just did it. No one really cared.
Other people had gone up already. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not a fucking. The world doesn't revolve around this character.
And they could have also made it so when she comes out to see the popular girls, they're like, "Hey, you weren't so bad at that karaoke."
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's just like that's not the way.
And they throw the towel at her.
Right. It doesn't work that way, you know.
And yeah, like that's the thing in movies, right? You can change your social standing overnight.
Right. And so. That would have been, and I'm positive, or I'm fairly sure that Bo Burnham's producers or someone reading the script said, "So I don't understand the story arc here. Like, where does this story go? Because it doesn't really go anywhere. There's only one moment when she at the very end confronts the 2 popular kids, and that I felt like actually I could have done without that scene, honestly. But there wasn't much. It was just sort of like you just get a sense that like, oh. She's been through like some terrible shit that a lot of kids go through, and she's more mature now. Yeah. But she's not drastically more mature. Right. She's just like, now she's going to be in high school.
I'll agree that was the less realistic moment, but it was a good movie moment because you think she's going after the guy, and then, nope, I've grown a little.
Right. And the cool boy never like says anything, you know, he never kisses her. No, you know, she never.
It's dead end.
Yeah. It just, everything, the only, so she gets that little moment with the other girls, but you could argue that was kind of weird to do.
Because to the viewers, to us, it's cool, but to everyone around there, it's like, she's weird.
Yeah, she's a weirdo.
Yeah.
The only real triumphant climax is when she, you know, hugs the dad.
That is a beautiful moment.
Right.
So,
and again, the way that Bo Burnham wrote it was nonverbal. Like, the dad gives this long speech, and it's kind of clunky, but it seems, you know, genuine. And the girl, all she does is she just hugs him.
Right.
And there's no like, you're the best dad, or I've learned so much from you, or I don't know. It's just you just get the sense that she just needs to be held, and she just needs that security, you know. And it was a beautiful scene.
Great stuff, man. I love the movie.
All right, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining us out there. Please take care of yourself, especially you people in 8th grade, because
you deserve it.